This conference will now be recorded.
Give Dale another minute. If he's not on, we'll go ahead and get started and he can join in progress.
Okay, that sounds good.
Commissioner Nations, is that you? Dale?
Hello.
Oh, Dale, you're on. Good,
Yeah.
good. We'll get started.
I'm Frank. Sorry. Okay.
That's okay, no problem.
Mhm.
This special public hearing of the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is called to order. Roll call, Frank Thorwald.
Hail Nations.
Stephen Cooper.
Mike Conway.
Bill Fire-Ovid.
We have a quorum. Let us move on. Marta, would you, the time is 10:05 a.m. Marta, would you please, our Administrator Hoden, would you please brief us on this public spacing exception? Marta?
Your mic is muted.
Thanks. Sorry. Okay, I'll start over.
Could you, yeah, could you brief us on the spacing exception and what?
Yes, can do. So today, we have Jade Ventures LLC, who's requested a spacing exception for the 8 sections within Township 17 North, Range 25 East. There's 8 sections, 25, 27, 29, 30, 31, 33, 34, and 35, that they are requesting 40-acre spacing. And we have Max Maxwell and Roger, forgive me, Roger, I forgot your last name.
Roger Smith.
Roger Smith, I should have known that. Roger Smith on the line from Jade Ventures to answer any questions with respect to this spacing exception request.
Do they have a presentation they would like to make to us?
Yes, we have a short presentation. Marta had distributed the hard copy to you, I believe.
Yeah.
But my name is Max.
Sir, I apologize for interrupting. This is Jyoti Belgian. I would just like to ask the chairman and the Administrator Hoden, before you proceed, where this item is on the meeting agenda.
This is a separate public hearing exception. There was a separate notice sent out on that one.
Yes.
From the general
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes,
I see it. Thank you.
is the notice of hearing.
And I apologize.
And it was posted on the website?
Yes, both were posted.
And just FYI.
Sir, I apologize for interrupting.
No, not a problem. So everybody knows Josie is our counsel from the State AG's office. Thank you for ensuring that we had our ducks in a row and everything was proper, Josie. Marta, would you go ahead and proceed?
Yeah, absolutely. I presented on my screen here what Mr. Maxwell and Mr. Smith submitted in terms of their summary presentation. Mostly it's an overview document here and then a map that they're going to use with respect to presenting their justification. So Max, you go ahead and I can scroll down as you need me to.
Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will say that my name is Max Maxwell, and I'm a petroleum engineer with Jade Ventures LLC. And we thank the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission for granting us this hearing. Well, we will be presenting justification for our request to grant 40-acre spacing on 8 sections in Township 17 North, Range 25 East of Apache County. Jade has applied for drilling permits on 3 of these sections, being 29, 31, and 35. We intend to apply for permits in all 8 sections. Our request is based on both precedent orders of the commission and geological and geophysical interpretation. Previous orders have granted the 40-acre spacing to sections surrounding and overlying our leases. We're simply asking the commission to fill in the gaps for us. The precedent orders were following hearings for Desert Mountain Energy Corp., Ranger Development, and Prize Energy. And actually 2 of the sections that are in under our leases have already been granted. So, but we'd like to have those reordered in our name. With that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Roger Smith, our geologist, who can explain the geology better than I as an engineer can. Roger?
Yeah, hi, this is Roger Smith. Again, thank you for taking the time to hear us on this matter. So basically, Ranger and Prize has used the same argument, but Ranger's argument was that most stream valleys are having a meandering river or stream within them that deposit sediments in the valley as it fills up. These channels generally wash all the fine grain material out and leave coarser grain material, typically sands, fine sands to coarse sands and gravels in the channels. And every time you have a flood, as the water overflows the banks of the river or stream, it deposits the silt and clays that are taken up in the floodwaters. And so those form the banks or overbank deposits. Those overbank deposits tend to be significantly less permeable than the sand and gravel deposits in the river beds. And as those river beds ultimately get buried by other overbank deposits as the river meanders through the valley as it's building up, you have these effectively channels of porous material that allows gas and oil to either migrate along or to be trapped within. And they're definitely confined by the banks of the channel that were deposited as clays and silts and are far less permeable to impermeable. So Ranger's argument was valid, and there's several conditions around the world that have been explored on this with regards to oil and gas, and they're one of the ones that we've been exploring is up in Cheyenne County, Colorado, and it is exactly this scenario where the only oil and gas producing wells are within these channel deposits that have been defined with 3D seismic and significant amounts of drilling. So that said, that would apply to our Holbrook Basin, and probably would apply throughout the Holbrook Basin at multiple depths within it, because it's all sedimentary deposits. And then we have the added advantage that we shot seismic over this for potash exploration 10 years ago, and that seismic exploration has pinpointed several of these isolated deposits in cross-section, and shows distinctive boundaries on these deposits. Now, we didn't include the seismic lines because they're proprietary, but I'm only stating that to back up this first statement about these channel deposits that within the sediments that can and do contain the oil and gas. I hope that didn't confuse anybody. So we're proposing to test several of these deposits at depth below the evaporite deposits that have generally never been really explored in this area, and we'd like to sample about 2,000 feet of sediments below the evaporites down to the top of the basement rock.
So I can see this better. What part of the area is that in the northeastern part of the state or the eastern part of the state?
The Holbrook Basin?
No, where? Yes, where is it within the basin?
Oh, okay. So we're in Township 25. Excuse me. We're in Township 17 North, 25 East.
Okay. Good.
Which is on the southeast side of the Petrified Wood National Park. Okay.
I know where you are now.
Okay, and then unfortunately I'm having video issues over here, so I can't put the Ranger and prize map on the screen, but the prize presentation included the Ranger block, and they kind of surround us, and the Ranger block covers us on at least 2 sections, and that would be in the prize presentation.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for him? Marta, I don't hear any questions from the commissioners. What has been your review on this?
Overall, Jade Ventures, like they mentioned, is requesting the spacing exception in multiple formations below the evaporites to basement. That is a little bit different than what the commission has done in the past with other operators. And so for that reason, that's definitely something for the commission to consider and think about as they make their decision. But they are correct in terms of my assessment of some of these formations and understanding of the nature of some of these formations in their justification.
How far is it to basement there?
I think
it's approximately 4,700 feet on section 35 and approximately 4,100 feet on section 29.
Okay. Again, any questions, discussions with respect to whether we want to approve this or not from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion. This is Dale.
Go ahead, Commissioner Nations.
I move that we approve the request for 40-acre spacing in sections 25, 27, 29, 30, 31, 34, 34, and 35 in Township 17 North, 25, Range 25 East in Apache County, Arizona.
Do we have a second?
Bill, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. You have your spacing approved.
Thank you very much.
That concludes the special public hearing. Is there a motion to close the hearing? I move we end the hearing.
So moved.
I second.
Okay.
This is Dale.
All say aye that are would like to have this hearing ended.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Just stay right on the line here, and we will go for our general meeting, our regular meeting.
I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording and then start a new recording for the regular meeting. Just give me one moment.
This conference will now be recorded.
It is now 10:15 a.m. on May 20th, 2022, and this a meeting of the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. Regular meeting is called to order. We have myself, Frank Thorwald, Commissioner Nations, Commissioner Cooper, Commissioner Firebrand, and Commissioner Conway on the line. Let us proceed to the first item on the agenda. Is there any conflicts of interest between any of the commissioners? Hearing no conflicts, let's go to agenda item 2. Vote on the public meeting, our last public meeting. Everybody has received those public meeting minutes from our last meeting of March 25th. Is there any changes? Any discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
This is Mike Conway, so moved.
Second? I second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? The minutes are approved. Let's go on to item 3, Pinadome Operating LLC asset transfer. Marta, would you fill us in on this?
Absolutely. So we have discussed the Pintadome and the rare earth exploration asset transfer of the 12-1 state in the last 2 meetings. At this point, Pintadome Operating LLC has officially submitted all required documentation, as well as Rare Earth Exploration submitted the release of the well, release of responsibility of that well. Additionally, Pintadome has submitted a bond to cover this well as well as additional wells. They submitted a blanket bond, which has been deposited with the State Treasurer's Office for safekeeping. And so at this point, Pintadome Operating requests that the Commission discuss, consider, and possibly vote on the transfer of that asset.
Administrator Hoden, do you see any issues in this?
I do not. They've assumed responsibility, full responsibility, and liability for the well. The bond was forfeited on the 12-1 from Rare Earth Exploration, but it was also forfeited for the 28-1. The funds will now be able to be utilized that are from the Rare Earth Exploration bond for the 28-1, more adequately cover the cost of plugging. And so we have a new bond to cover the 12-1, which sounds like a great situation. My understanding is their intention is to deepen the well and try to test a lower zone, and so potentially making the well economic.
Commissioners, questions, discussion? Do I have a motion then to approve the asset transfer?
This is Commissioner Cooper. I move that we approve the asset transfer from Rare Earth Exploration to Pinadome Operating LLC.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Bill.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. The transfer is approved. Moving on to agenda item 4, a report by the Oil and Gas Administrator. Marta, would you see?
Absolutely. So section 4, subsection A, drilling and completion activity update. The update since the last commission meeting is that the 3 Desert Mountain Energy wells that were drilled as of the last commission meeting were perforated since that last meeting, and all completion reports for those perforation activities have been submitted, as well as well logs. Additionally, we've received 3 new applications. We've actually now received 5 as of today. As of the posting of this agenda, there were 3 new applications from Jade Ventures received, the 3 that were discussed in the previous hearing. Additionally, we've received 2 permit applications from Desert Mountain Energy for additional wells in the last 2 days. So those are currently being reviewed as well. And the Jade Ventures permits were pending the spacing exception hearing So they should be approved today or first thing Monday morning. Next on the list is subsection B, the federal funding opportunities.
Marta, before you proceed, let's just ask the commissioners in each one if there's any questions or discussions on those items.
You're right. Sorry about that.
Is there any discussion or questions of our administrator on item A? Hearing none, go ahead, Marta.
Absolutely. Okay. So now subsection B, federal funding opportunities. First, I'm going to discuss the initial grant application, and then I'll get into the subsequent grant opportunities. So in the last month, myself with DEQ has been hard at work completing the application for the initial grant funds. The due date for that application was last Friday, the 13th. We did successfully submit our application for the state of Arizona, seeking the full large initial grant of $25 million for the intention of developing and deploying an orphaned well plugging and remediation program. This program broadly included our preliminary assessment with the help of Jim Ballard. We identified potentially 246 sites that may be orphaned in the state of Arizona, and we intend to take a phased approach at the plugging and remediation project, which will start with well inventorying, site assessment, so testing and sampling to determine the current condition of the sites, and then plugging, and then a remediation project to remediate any potential contamination found on any of these sites, as well as restoration of those sites back to their as close to as possible to their natural site or natural state. And so that program and its scope of work was outlined in an overview sense in our application to the federal government. I believe that application will become public knowledge and be publicly available at some point. I'm assuming at the point at which the application is approved. Our understanding of the initial grant opportunity is that the federal government, Department of Interior, should be awarding those funds within 30 days of receipt of an application. So we anticipate the award date to be somewhere in mid-June. Although I know that there will be some back and forth in terms of asking questions, and so there may be some small changes to that application over the course of the next month. But we believe we are eligible for the funds and should receive the funds for the state of Arizona, and that those funds should cover the cost of assessment of all of these 246 sites, and then remediation and plugging for approximately half of them, depending on the site condition. Obviously, it's variable. And then this will move on to the next grant opportunity, which is the formula grant application.
Minister Holden, before you proceed on that, let's go back to the first initial grant for just a moment.
Okay.
And talk about what that included with regard to the O'Neill land and how the drawdown would work on that for money and that extra 90 days that we talked about.
Absolutely. Forgive me. And so a little bit of background information on how the initial grants award, receipt, and then obligations timeline looks like. And so for the initial grant funds, each state, like I mentioned, there's a 30-day approximately from the receipt of application until the award date. But within the grant guidance, it was indicated that every state is eligible based on need to request a 90-day delay from award date to receipt of funds. And so basically that's just a delay to the point where you could start drawing down those funds. It allows states the opportunity to gather information, prepare contracts, etc. Once those funds are received and you can begin drawing down, you have 90 days from that point to obligate 90% of the funds. So any project-specific funds, non-administrative, need to be obligated to contracts within 90 days of the receipt of those funds. So it'd be a very, very quick turnaround time in the next 6 months of awarding all of the contracts to do the site assessments, the plugging, and the remediation and restoration work over the next 6 months. And then additionally, within the initial grant, there's a 10% administrative portion of the funds, which will be utilized to hire staff to be managing this work and overseeing this work, posting data that will be publicly available, community engagement to involve particularly overburdened communities and get engagement on the process and feedback throughout the process of the program. And some of the administrative funds will be utilized for website maintenance and development or acquisition of an existing platform or portal that could be used to manage and hold data and make it publicly available throughout this process. So there's many pieces that are also included in how this $25 million would be spent. And the intention is to start hiring immediately to manage the grant, to get the ball rolling. As soon as the funds are awarded, the state of Arizona intends to start work before the receipt date. And so we are actively seeking employees to start hiring for those project management positions. And then by the time the funds are received in three months from the award date, the intention is to hire the remainder of the staff. And then the timeline, the estimated timeline that we included in our application for completion of the work is we estimated 3 years to complete the portion that would cover the $25 million. And so, like I mentioned previously, that would be assessment of the 246 sites and plugging and remediation of approximately half of those sites but again, it's dependent on the specific site costs. Additionally, just so everyone's aware, it will not be just random selections in terms of how we prioritize things. There is a process and a system we're working on developing, and we'll be engaging the public to get their input on prioritization of sites and how we would weight those priorities in terms of which areas are most important to the community to get out and remediate and plug first. And so that's also a part of the funding opportunity with respect to community engagement.
And outreach, I might add outreach to the community, to the entire state to find out about funds.
Yeah, and you mentioned ONEAR, and I apologize I didn't touch on that, but of these 246 wells, 17 were identified as being on ONEAR, which is the Office of Navajo and Hopi Indian Relocation. It is a federal agency, but the Department of Interior has indicated that the funds that are going to be awarded to the state will be responsible for remediation and plugging on those sites. So those 17 were included in our 246, and we are working actively to build a line of communication as well as intergovernment agreements with the Navajo Nation and the ONEAR office in terms of completing that work and how to be most efficient to do that work.
I might add DEQ as well as the governor's office have been intricately involved in all of this, and the governor's office has set up a team to help moving these things forward.
Yes, absolutely. I would definitely want to give credit where credit is due. This was not just the commission's work to put together this application. There are many people who supported the activities. The scope of remediation and site assessment expands far beyond just oil and gas. So we're looking at air, water, and soil remediation potentially if any contamination is found. And so we've engaged technical expertise across AZOGCC. And so definitely, and the governor's office helped us put together this application as well. So they've been a great help and support in getting that application out the door.
Any question? Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. This is Dale Nations.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Marta, what is the plan for who will actually be doing the assessment? Is there a large staff involved, or I mean, it's obviously beyond your existing staff?
So the way that the budget was outlined in the application is that all of the far majority of the project specific work, so the actual site assessments, site characterization, plugging and remediation and restoration costs would all be contracted out to vendors. We have already identified some statewide contracts of vendors who we are actively reaching out to, because utilizing a statewide contract that already exists expedites the process. And then those vendors obviously have the ability to subcontract out the work to any sub vendors across the state, with priority being to small businesses, women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses. We definitely, the federal government feels that that's very important, so we have included that in our language with respect to subcontractors. So to be more specific, it will be contracted out.
So there will be a call for bids.
Yes.
To be considered for approval to do the assessment. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So the staff who would make the decision on whether the staffs are adequate?
So that lends me, so the 10% administrative piece, this is kind of tied, so maybe I'll make this announcement now. I will not be with the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission effective next Friday. I'm moving on to a future opportunity, and we're actively seeking my replacement. That being said, my replacement will now be a management position in the future. And so that management program manager will have multiple staff underneath of them. And of that staff, one would be my current level position, my current level of experience, who would be focused on the day-to-day activity for the commission. And then additionally, there would be at least 3 additional staff, 2 project managers with some technical expertise, and then a more like principal level, which is like, say, about 20 years of experience, technical expert to be advising and reviewing all data submitted by the contractors. But the project managers would manage the day-to-day of those all the vendors and making sure everyone's staying on track and on timeline. And then lastly, we did budget in time for a technical expert from each of the sub divisions within DEQ to allocate 25% of their time to this project. And so within air, within water, and within waste, we'll have at least one technical expert to be reviewing contracts, reviewing work that's coming in to ensure that it meets the standards in which are outlined in the scope of work.
I might add something in that there's also been money allowed, excuse me, allocated if additional training is needed in any of these areas for any of the staff.
Yes.
I have another question. Dale Nations here. Will these will all be state employees?
The ones that I mentioned, yes. And then we have all of the project specific items will be contracted out. And so they'll be via a contract, but we've also included in the budget room for, it's called staff augmentation, which basically means contracting an employee in-house. And so if need be, we have room in the budget to have project specific staff. So like say we were doing inspections of sites and things like that, we could bring contractors in-house who would not necessarily be, they'd be FTE, full-time employees, but they would be contractors. So we also put some room in the budget for that.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry to hear you're leaving, Marta.
I know, I'm sorry, but I'm also excited, so.
Are there any other questions for?
Yeah, this is Mike Conway. I do have a question. Is it possible to get to see the narrative of that proposal that went off to
yes.
federal government?
Yes, Mike, and I apologize. I meant to send it out to all the commissioners last night, following the overview document that I sent you, but I will send it out immediately following this meeting so you can review it. I just need to determine when it becomes publicly available because I know the federal government plans on posting it to everybody else. But I think anyone could request it at this point.
Marta, why don't you just send out the entire package to each one of the commissioners?
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Frank.
Sure. Any other questions? Proceed, Marta, please.
Okay. Now we'll jump to the formula grant opportunity. So as I mentioned, the funds, the $25 million, we don't estimate based on assessing costs for doing all of the assessment and remediation and plugging work. We don't believe it'll cover 100% of plugging and remediation of 246 sites. approximately 246 sites. That number may change as we begin the phased approach. So the intention is when the opportunity becomes available and the federal government, the Department of Interior, releases the next phase of funding, Arizona DEQ intends to apply for additional funds for the remainder of the project, which would extend the project out potentially to 5 to 6 years. And so to continue the work that we've already established the scope of work to do. In terms of total number of what that may look like, they've indicated we are currently eligible for another 4 million, but based on our need that we assessed from putting together our budget, the state of Arizona intends to request for more than just that $4 million that they initially said that we would be eligible for. And we believe we have justification for that. In terms of a timeline for the formula grant, DOI indicated when they released the initial grant guidance at the beginning of April that it would be out within about a month. So we anticipated that guidance in the last week or two, but we still have not received anything from them and have not gotten any updates from them. Obviously, I'm sure they're very busy reviewing all of these initial grant applications that came in, but I do expect formula grant guidance and a timeline for the application for formula grant very, very soon, definitely in the next month or two, I would anticipate from what they previously indicated. And so the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission will definitely be on the lookout for when that guidance is released and will actively pursue the application for that process. Any questions on formula? Yes.
I have another question, Marta. Will the commission be advised on as this project goes into effect? Will there be regular advisements to the commission, or how would that work?
So due to the nature of the commission not holding any actual employees, DEQ had to apply for the funds. So the Department of Environmental Quality is actually the agency within Arizona that applied for these funds, but they're doing so on behalf of the commission. And so in that respect, yes, the commission will be engaged throughout the process. And as I mentioned, the structure of management of the program, the project manager will be your administrator moving forward. And so that project manager will be splitting their time between managing the grant staff and managing the day-to-day activities and needs of the commission, and will be doing commission meetings, et cetera, and keeping the commission apprised of all updates associated with the grant. And I can't say for sure, but I would assume that the commission's opinion would be also taken into consideration with respect to the prioritization process, the same way that the public's opinion and technical experts' opinions will be taken into consideration.
And that's still somewhat in flux. And
yes.
Also the state is in the process of trying to set up a separate account where the money would go to for the Oil and Gas Commission and other things. And that is still being worked on at this time. And if that happens, things may change slightly.
True.
Any other questions on that? Administrator Houghton, would you move on to the next item?
Yes. Okay. So the next item is the next phase of grant fund opportunity, and that is the performance grant application process. And so within the performance grants, if you read the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, this is the third phase of funding, but there's multiple opportunities within that, multiple justifications for eligibility. What Arizona believes that we would be eligible for are funds specific to regulatory improvements. And so the regulatory improvement grants are up to $20 million in order to improve regulation within the state to prevent future orphaned wells. And so Arizona ADEQ intends to apply for a regulatory improvement grant under the performance grant funds that would help aid and improve our regulations in order to reduce future burden on the state and any future potential
Mhm.
Orphan wells, sorry, blanking on words. The timeline for the performance grant, this one is specifically outlined in the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act. It does indicate that any state that applies for an initial grant is awarded an initial grant, that the state would be eligible to apply for performance grant funds 6 months, 180 days after the award date of any initial grant award. And so the expectation is that 6 months from approximately mid-June, the state of Arizona would be able to assess whether they want to begin the application process and what they want to apply for in terms of the performance grant funds. And I don't believe that there's a specific deadline for how fast you must apply for the regulatory improvement grant. So the state doesn't have to apply for it immediately, although they could. But the deadline for use of the regulatory improvement grants for under the performance grants is the same deadline of use for everything else. The end of the performance period is September 30th of 2030. And so there is several years to utilize those funds.
Marta, we have until, what is it, 2030, September, something like that, to use all of the funds?
Yes, September 30th of 2030.
Part of the issue in setting it up the way we did was simply because of where to place the funds, because the Oil and Gas Commission didn't have a separate account. So we had to utilize DEQ to be able to accomplish these goals in a timely manner, or we would have missed this. So everything they've done has been on behalf of the Oil and Gas Commission, and that was an acceptable way of getting around some of the issues we have. And some of the things to change that, as I mentioned before, are still in progress, and we have yet to find out how that will work. But we have time to make that happen. Any questions from the commission? Administrator Hoden, do you want to go on to C and to talk about how that will affect what we're doing and our outreach and being able to for filing of documents from the various companies?
Yes, absolutely. So with respect to the website redesign progress updates, I'm under the impression that the back-end system of our current website has been updated. So at this point, it is much easier for our current website to be updated via code. And so that I believe has already occurred this year. And so with that, though, a lot of the website redesign and progress update is going to be associated with this initial grant funding. As I touched on previously, when I was talking about the initial grant, I mentioned the fact that within the budget for the initial grant, there is the opportunity for a new portal data management website, in which we're currently ADEQ is currently evaluating options that currently exist that could already be ready to go. And then we could just start contract and start using immediately for data management, or building something in-house. They're assessing both options, but they budgeted for the higher amount within the grant budget. And so there's definitely the opportunity for either. They're weighing the pluses and minuses of both sides. But with that, basically, this would be a portal in which the idea is that this would be a portal in which all of our contractors could be uploading data throughout the process. Then we could have our project managers reviewing and approving, getting opinions when necessary from technical experts, etc. And then pushing that data to be live to the public to be able to see the real-time progress that's occurring on different sites. Something that is very important within the Department of Interior and the federal government is the transparency and community engagement piece. So we are also looking at ways to utilize website updates in a way to engage the community. So we are looking at, again, updating our current website or utilizing another service that already exists that could be pushing surveys, engaging the community. We also intend to hire community liaisons specific to this project who will be out there in in the community, getting opinions, making people aware, talking to local government officials, making sure the community is being engaged and involved in the process. So all of that is to say that there's a lot coming associated with the grant that will not only be updates that will last just the period of the grant, but getting all of our records not only in digital form, which a lot of our records are currently scanned and available online, but we're going to catalog them and make them searchable. That's all part of this grant, because in order to properly assess what records we have, we need to be able to better search those and pull data and export data from those records. And so that is the attention with the new portal, is that it'd be more of a data management, less just scanned documents. And then that could, the intention is that that portal could be used point forward for new applications and new wells that are drilled and completed, et cetera. All of the data would continue to be uploaded into this portal point forward in order to prevent future orphan or minimize the risk of future orphaned wells.
Any questions?
So website. Yeah, any questions?
I would just have one question. I think, Marta, is there a schema that you have in place?
Would you identify yourself?
Oh, yeah, this is Mike Conway. Is there a schema in place regarding the data types and data collection strategies?
I'm working on it actively as we speak, Mike, with DEQ staff to identify a high level and then a more detailed level of data pooling. The idea is obviously any records that aren't currently scanned will be scanned. And then the idea would be to contract to another vendor who would have more technical expertise and be able to meta tag, extract data from those scanned documents and put them in a more usable format. And so what we're trying to do is identify what data do we want to be pulled. Obviously, if any of the commissioners of the public has opinions about what they would like to be pulled and what would be useful information, please feel free to email the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission email, and we'll take that into consideration when developing this priority list for what data needs to be extracted. And then obviously, whomever my replacement is will have a say in this as well. So I'm starting the process and trying to give a broad how I envision it going, and then whoever will be my replacement would have the ultimate say on what data to extract.
Let me add something to that. Marta will also potentially be coming back occasionally to update the person replacing her with extra information to help them transition.
Yeah, I believe in making myself available to whomever the next administrator is. I know short time frames, it takes a little bit of time to hire someone within the state. And so I know I'll be gone before someone is hired. And so for that reason, I want to make myself available so that they can understand the work that I've done, why I made the decisions that I made. And so I hope not to just leave someone empty-handed.
Any questions on this before we move forward? Hearing none, Marta, why don't we move on to item D?
All right, rule updates. So the 5-year rule review specifically, since the last commission meeting, we did successfully submit a 5-year rule review. We found out that we could not get an additional extension. And so we submitted a skeleton 5-year rule review. And so it's partially completed, but not completely filled out to our, desired level. Obviously, my time commitment in the last month has been all towards grant application process. And so I haven't had a chance to get back to the 5-year rule review, but I do have lots of notes in place for whomever my replacement is to hopefully take the lead on that immediately as soon as they take the position and finalize that 5-year rule review for GERC. And then proposed statutes and rule package changes. As I mentioned with the performance grant funds, there's definitely opportunity for hiring additional staff to be making these changes. I have been, throughout the process of establishing a scope of work for the grant, I've been looking at what more industry standards are in order to improve our regulations and collecting that information for whomever my predecessor or whoever follows me in this position. And so, and I've been sharing that with the DEQ management, so they are aware of the intentions for changing the rules moving forward. Any questions on rule updates?
Hearing none, Marta, we've already covered web portal, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say E and F, I don't really have any specific updates for either of those right now.
Okay. Moving on to 5, the report by the chairman. Last week I was at, and part of this week, I was at the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact annual meeting, and just a moment. Sorry. Which was a good meeting. EPA was there. There was a lot of discussion about how we move forward in each one of these areas that we've been talking about with regard to these funds. I also had announced too that our administrator was leaving, and there's several people from the AZOGCC that may be applying for her position here that already has experience in other states. That's item A. Is there any questions on the meeting? Moving on to B, New Mexico Produced Water Consortium. We continue to work with them on the produced water, but we don't have any specific new updates right now on that. The budget agency collaboration and funding, I think we've just covered about everything we can already cover on that. Let me move on to D, Office of Lanier and Hopi Indian Relocation. I've been working closely with the governor's office and the governor's team on this, and the governor's liaison to the tribal nations here in the state. And as of just yesterday, or of just a few days ago, we had a discussion with the Navajo Nation, their Department of Justice, and the governor's team, and they are working on a redraft of the initial proposal that we sent them at the request of O'Neill. And basically, the idea is that on the existing land where there is helium, the tribe, the Navajo Nation would do an inspection, Bureau of Land Management would do an inspection, and Arizona Oil and Gas Commission would do an inspection, and we would rotate. That way we can move forward with the additional development that's been proposed on the O'Neill land. In addition to that, we could do those same kinds of things with regard to the 17 wells sites that we need to inspect on O'Neill land, and they are looking at a public relations campaign too to find out if there's any additional sites on the O'Neill land, and communications between us in general on oil and gas issues between the states. Additionally, the AZOGCC formally invited the Navajo Nation to join, and I passed that on to the governor's staff, which was should have been what I expect would be passed on to the president of the Navajo Nation if it hasn't already been passed on. Any questions on any of that so far?
Yeah, Bill, you keep mentioning the Navajos. Are we including the Hopi also in this?
No, because there are no wells. The answer is yes. The Hopi Nation will be involved in this, but with regard to the O'Neill land, there is no wells that we currently know of on O'Neill land that is part of the Hopi Nation. But as far as this outreach, that would include the Hopi Nation, and there may be some on somewhere. But again, all the funding for the tribal nations is coming separate in a separate package, unrelated to the state. The only exception to that is going to be the O'Neill lands. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to be sure that the lines of communication included them.
Yes, it does. Any other questions on that? Dale, do you have anything to report?
Yes, I do. This is Dale Nations. I want to publicly commend our chairman and the oil and gas administrator on the good work relative to the fund, the grant funds to update our control and supervision of past drilling activities, these orphan wells. So congratulations on your good work, and Marta, good luck to you in your new position. And Frank, you keep up the good work. This is Dale Nations.
Thank you, Commissioner Nations. It's certainly been a team effort. Let's move on to F, ADEQ. ADEQ has been met the challenge, and that was why in the last meeting I wanted you to meet the director. They have really been pushing to make this happen, as well as the governor's office, and we've been trying to make sure everything worked in the proper way. So it's been a challenge, but it's getting there. So and ADEQ moving forward, they've pulled together the staffing, everything they needed, put together additional funds for the commission to use right now to be able to do these things. So it's all moving forward effectively. On item G, the legislation affecting Arizona, there's really nothing out there right now other than what the governor is working on with regard to the separate location of funds for the commission. There will be legislation that we'll propose, as we mentioned earlier, that will update things and make things more effective as we move forward, including the cost of application to bring that more current with what the rest of the country is. Any questions on that? On H, lobbyist registration. I have not registered yet. Part of the reason I delayed in registering was because they wanted to report it on this last report, and I just also haven't had time to finish that. And I wanted to ask Commissioner Cooper if he had registered yet.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I have not registered yet. The reason for that was I represent a number of special purpose taxing districts and some cities and towns, and I was trying to see if I could combine them all in one application. And looking at the online form, it appeared to me that that was going to cause more problems than solutions. And so I do plan on Monday or Tuesday of next week getting that application completed for the lobbyist, uncompensated, for the Oil and Gas Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner. Marta, what is going to be the best time, our Administrator Holden, what's going to be the best time for us to register? Because I know we have to report it as part of this package that we're getting. Should we do it, go ahead and do it now or later?
So at this point, Frank, given the fact that DEQ is formally the agency in which which applied for the federal funds, I don't believe that the commission would need to indicate anything. But obviously, at which point either yourself or Commissioner Cooper do register as a lobbyist, I would let DEQ know in case that their management determines that they should let the federal government know of that. But I don't believe that there's any requirement given the fact that the commission is not technically the agency that applied.
Even though it's on behalf of us?
That is my understanding at this point.
Does the AG's office have any advice on us on that? Should we wait or do any further checking?
Chairman Thorwald, if I were going to give you advice, we would go into executive session, but you don't need to because I don't have an opinion, so I can speak after I do some research. I can speak to you individually.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll just also mention, Frank, that the reporting for lobbying is specific to federal lobbying, so I don't think that this would apply in that case either.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion on anything that we have done so far?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Cooper. Based on that conversation, I will wait until you get the green light from the parties that it's okay to file the registration. I'd rather err on the side of caution than file something that might cause a potential problem that we're not aware of.
Thank you, Commissioner. That brings up one other item. Until we have somebody in place to replace our administrator, from time to time, I may email all of you in one email updates. Please do not respond to that or we'll have a problem. I can update you, but don't pass the information or talk between yourselves on it. Is there, hearing nothing else, call to the public? Is there anybody in the public that would like to comment? Anybody that would like to, this is a call to the public. Hearing none, let's move on to agenda item 7. Is there anything that somebody would like to have one of the commissioners on our future agenda?
Yeah, this is Bill. I got two things. One is sort of reviewing the performance deposits and being sure that we have, we're getting adequate monies to cover any work that needs to be done on a well, abandoned well. Then the other one was that we've been to see the facility at Alamogordo, and they've got another one at Farmington. Is there any interest in kind of arranging a trip to take a look at the one in Farmington?
Commissioners, do any of you want to go to Farmington to look at that?
I'm game.
I might.
What facility is this in Farmington, please? This is Mike Conway.
Desalinization.
Oh, I see.
Produced water.
Yeah, I might be interested at some point.
That's also been part of the discussion with the Navajo Nation too, is the produced water on the Navajo Nation and general use of water desalinization in that area, because there's potential shortage in that area because of the Colorado River. So if you're doing that, let me know so we can coordinate that with the governor's office. Anything else? Any announcements other than that? Hearing none, the only announcement I would like to make is to say thank you to Marta and wish her the very best and thank her for all her work that she's done so far. Yeah, and in the 2 years she's been on with us, I can testify that she's actually put in 4 years. So thank you, Marta.
Thank you.
Do I have an emotion to adjourn? I like that. We're gonna.
This is Mike Conway. So moved.
Second.
Bill, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Good luck, Marta.
Thank you. Appreciate it.